There we go. So, a huge welcome from literally all around the world. It's lovely to see people from Europe as well as people from this side of the world. Um, and I think you all know me well enough to know that I have been exploring for a while what's happening in coaching, and can we, rather than just go along with the flow of it, actually direct it. And if we were to direct it, where would we want to direct it to? How is it changing? How do we want it to change? And if you're anything like me, you've got a passion for coaching. You've trained over a number of different years in different modalities. And I don't know that as I've gone through my training or my trainings over time, that I have stopped and gone, what does that do for my definition of coaching? So I started to get curious about definitions, and I started to really get curious about myself, and it's definitely challenged my own thinking. So I thought it was worth sharing that and to see where other people land with it. So I will share my screen with you. There we go. Hopefully that shows up. And let me just get all of you back on gallery view so that I can see you. It's nothing worse than thinking you're talking to a blank screen and not real people. And yeah, the question I raised was, when did you last review your coaching definition? And I don't know if you thought about that because you saw the question, whether you have got a date to that, or whether you've kind of went, actually, not for a while. So it made me curious in terms of how we could explore this, what definitions it would be worth exploring that have been written by other people, and looking at the dates of those. And I'm not talking any old coaching. You know me well enough to say that I am talking about coaching that is effective, that is future proof, that is giving value in today's world, which is a pretty challenging world to be in, and a set of coaching that is beyond just a process. It's not about a linear model that you're following. Even if you've been trained in that, then I'm talking about weaving that in, as I know many of you do. So yeah, it's about what is real life coaching in today's world. What could it be? Are we doing the best that we can? I truly believe as coaches, we are being called to step up at the moment. And I think we could play a huge role in supporting people in the world that maybe we're not doing as well as we couldn't be, or as well as we could be. I think you all know me, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. This was just a fun bit of AI that I came across. It created this little meme for me that I thought was actually quite accurate, and without me telling it, it actually gave me a grey and a ginger cat, which is exactly what I've got. So my cats showed up as well, which I thought was really cute. So I'm a neuroscience-based trainer as well as a coach. One of the things that led me to this webinar tonight was I've had a few things happen in my life, not all of them particularly positive. I'm sure you're in the same position. And because I'm aware of coaching, I will often go for coaching myself to help me get through those. So I will make a choice to go and find a coach who has maybe got an expertise in a certain area. I'm lucky to be well connected, so I know who to reach out to. And sometimes I will go to somebody for something specific about strength, or about challenging me, or about pushing my boundaries, and I will make that choice. I have in the past, sometimes, not often, luckily, but I have in the past sometimes not quite got what I was looking for, not got the depth that I wanted, not got the breadth that I've wanted. And I've been sat there kind of knowing what the next question is going to be because I know what process they're following. And it's like, really? Like, you know who I am? Can we not do this on a human individual basis rather than, following it? And dare I say, sometimes I felt there's been a little bit of a feel of it being fake or superficial reassurance. I've even had coaches kind of sit there with this smug look on their face going, I know what the answer to your problem is. Do you want me to tell you? No, actually, I don't. I want a coach who can help me find the answer for myself and to access my own wisdom from within. So I could go through the qualifications I've got. I think most of you know that I have a kind of what we call a kete here, in terms of a basket of lots of different qualifications, of which I have gone and sought to meet my clients' needs. So as my clients' needs have broadened, so I've gone and got qualified to be able to cope with a wider range of needs. And that has created a challenge for me in as much as I am no longer a traditional coach. And so, how do I place myself? How do I market myself? What do I call myself? And I'm guessing that that will be true of a lot of other coaches as well. In fact, I know it's true of a lot of others, some of whom are here. So, I trained initially back in the 1990s, which dates me a little bit. And coaching has changed enormously in that time. I'll share you a definition from the 90s and see whether or not you still agree with it, whether or not you still feel it's relevant. And if you would add to it, what would you add to it? I could talk about our, and I say our because Angel was part of our book last year as well, that we started this conversation on a global basis and wrote a book where 23 of us came together and just spoke about what we did on the boundaries of what was traditional coaching. We weren't trying to say we had the answer. We weren't even trying to suggest there is an answer. All we were doing was sharing how we are pushing the boundaries of our own coaching in a safe way. And so that book was a bestseller in April last year. And in September this year, there will be another book that's coming out that pushes it again, even further. So we're in an interesting time, I think, in terms of coaches. And I do think we're almost being called to step up and challenge ourselves to meet the need that I think is absolutely key at the moment in society. So, what else can I say about me? I'm not sure I'm going to say too much more about me. I'd love to have time of hearing all from you, but I know time's precious. So, maybe what I will ask you is why are you here? And maybe not let's go on chat, maybe just unmute. What was it around the topic of when did you last renew your coaching definition that attracted you to come tonight? What were you curious about? What were the questions that went through your mind?
Evening,
Evening,
Wakama
morning.
from here from Scotland. Um, I think for me, it's going to just be focusing on developing my business because I've left employment after so many years, 20 odd years.
Oh, do I
And
say
one of the
congratulations?
Yeah. But one of the things that really got me is that I've signed up to mentor CEOs
Mm,
in the charitable sector through this platform, and it's a voluntary thing. And my first client, I'm sitting there discussing in my head, is this coaching? Is this mentoring? And does it really matter right now? Uh,
yeah, nice.
and the person who coordinates it, it was interesting that what I was perceiving as mentoring, they were sort of thinking maybe it was more coaching.
Yeah,
And so I thought, oh, this and around the same time, then this popped up on Facebook, and I was like, this is so timely for me to just to help me unpack my own thoughts because I've just yeah. And the other thing is what you said there is I was thinking, oh, I better go and do another course. I better go and do this course. I better do that. And I've actually got a business coach at the moment who said, stop doing courses. You've got enough to launch. So, yeah.
yeah, beautiful. Thank you for that. And I'm glad you said that out loud because, in terms of mentoring, it wasn't something that I'd necessarily been thinking of tonight. But absolutely, it's as appropriate as thinking of about that boundary to therapy as it is to the boundary to mentoring. And officially, yes, they have completely different definitions, but the same would actually be true of that boundary coaching to mentoring. Has it changed? Is it still the same as it was back in the 90s? I don't think it is the same. And I think sometimes we do sometimes sit there with a hat on as a coach and drift into that mentoring space because that's what the client wants. So we
Yeah.
might give advice. You have years of experience as a CEO. So, yeah, really interesting that the boundary that maybe I've written this with a therapeutic boundary in mind, but actually there's an equally valid boundary to explore into mentoring, and dare I say, even possibly supervision, and maybe even PD. So, whatever your niche is in terms of where you sit, whatever words I use your own interpretation of that within your own area of practice, and what is the boundary that might be shifting for you, which might be different than it is for me. Most of you will know I sit in that kind of health and well-being space where I coach around stress and anxiety, as well as, once they're more regulated, I then might go into a more obvious coaching role where we might look at beliefs, or we might look at meaning and purpose, or we might look at some of the other things that are more obviously coaching. So, yeah, thanks for that. It's really helpful. Who wants to jump in next?
I wouldn't mind. I'm Lindy Laley. Careful is my maiden name on the screen, and I'm from Auckland, New Zealand. I feel like a bit of a new kid on the block, to be honest, because I'm in the process of setting up a coaching business,
Yeah,
and I'm really, really interested in coaching immigrants who've come to New Zealand and the journey they've gone through. And I'm here tonight because I thought the question was very relevant and very interesting, because I think the answer is different to all of us. I would expect, um, because we all are coaches, but we work with our own modalities and from our own life's experience and how we've grown into this role. Um, And that's why I suspect that our answers are all slightly different.
mm. I think you're right. And yet we try to put out global definitions of what coaching is and isn't, what it can be and what it can't be.
Yeah, what I understand it to be is very broad in terms of what it used to be, very goal oriented. So clients would come to us in the 90s, not to me, but to us coaches, and we would help them define goals and help them get there. But I think it is so much more, because we're not just humans pursuing a goal. Um, if I think about immigrants, for instance, I think where I need to start is with orientation rather than with goal setting, because immigrants, they come here and every part of their life is in limbo, actually, because they can suffer from serious professional or personal identity loss. So they really need to be brought back to themselves first before you can even think about goal setting, just as an example.
Yeah, beautiful example. And, I know Angela and I both work with the nervous system, and you can totally understand why they possibly dysregulated and unsafe. And Lindy, Rakana, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you might want to get in touch with Rakana after this call, because she used to be in Auckland, the CEO of Belong.
Of the
Of Belong.
Oh,
So talk about somebody on the call who has absolute expertise in that field, who also has a coaching mindset. Don't want to put you on the spot, Rakana, and I know you're going to be busy with your own business, but if you were willing to exchange, names, that might be another benefit from having been here tonight for you.
fantastic.
You just never know who's going to turn up in a network.
Oh, great.
Who'd like to jump on next?
I'll go next, Susan. Hello, everyone. I'm from Auckland, and I do admire your work and how to blend different modalities together. And the Nervous System Whisperer is my inspiration to come and attend. The what Lindy mentioned about goal orientated is nothing but a surface problem or surface ambition. It's how long does the impact actually impact rather than just go to the first step and then just pose. The integration of the nervous system and how to bring everything on a grounded base, and then not to be fixated on a definition itself, because every session has its own blend of different modalities, and it doesn't have to be a step-by-step stage. It's how to be in tune with the needs, the aspiration, the potential, the fear, everything together. And I posed because I just felt lost with the modalities, and I wanted to be grounded effortlessly. Found out that being quiet actually helps more than just go and jump in and worry about the actual rigidity of going through a procedure. So I guess the flow of how to dance brought me here.
Beautiful. Love that. Flow of how to dance. Absolutely love it. There was a beautiful post by a guy called Elias this week who talked about flow being internal coherent alignment. And I thought that was really lovely and would fit with some of the other trainings that we've done. So some of you might resonate with that. Okay, Louise, who would like to jump in next?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm happy to.
Oh, go ahead.
Off together.
I was like, I'm not actually sure who's best to to go.
Well, you are now perfectly poised. So
So I think for me, it was interesting, and apologies. I've jumped on. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to make the call. I won't be on for very long, but I thought, you know what, I'll jump on and I'll see how much I'm able to stay on the call. For me, I think it's a myriad of things that each of you so far have mentioned, which is to say that I don't see there being a need so much so for definitive services, being either mentor or coach. I think historically there certainly were. I know that if I go back 15 or so years ago, if I wanted a mentor, I had to kind of look out there for a mentor per se. If I wanted a coach, that was something very different. And I was more specific on, you know, whether it's trauma-informed coaching, what it might be. For me, I find that even outward facing, my services have been delineated as, you know, you can book mentoring hours with me, you can book coaching hours with me, you can book advisory hours. Having said that, to date, and this is in the last 20 odd years, I have never had a single client come to me and sit squarely in one area, which is to say, it might have started as a coaching piece where we kind of work on values, and it's far more of them talking and me providing almost a mirror and just kind of some provocative pieces that elaborate on what they're asking. And quite often that would then transition into mentoring, leveraging my pre-existing experience, for instance, in the corporate space, and what this might mean for them and some of the opportunities that I see arising. And, you know, same side, if they booked a mentoring service, it might start on the mentoring side of the house. You know, how do you see it? What are your thoughts? You know, how would you do this? What are you thinking from my experience, my professional experience, through to coaching? And kind of let's work on even some of the embodied pieces and the emotions. And so I find there to be far more overlap. And I see people in the market who market themselves as coaches. And a lot of the time, I do see an overlap. I also have hesitation, without doubt, I have on quite a few occasions over the years, pushed back on people who come, not interestingly to the mentoring side, but usually to the coaching side of the house, and believe that it might have therapy. You know, so they're asking some questions and I'm like, look, I'm not a therapist. So I think, you know, I would pair well with a psychologist, clinical psychologist, or a psychiatrist, but I can only go so far. I do need to delineate, and I've even ensured some of my copy that goes out online, public facing, calls that out ahead of time, so I don't find myself having people book with me or spend time with me off me running workshops thinking that I am a therapist. So I feel more so probably for legal reasons the need to call that out loudly and clearly. Yeah, so some hesitation on the therapist side of the house. That's a complete different specialization. And I've even changed, on the law side of the house, I used to act as a solicitor doing legal advisory work. I still do that, but I've removed all of my copy around that because it's more so general advisory pieces and actually partner with lawyers if need be, if things go to litigation. So I do think for legal reasons, it's important to risk mitigate and ensure that people aren't coming to me thinking that I'm a therapist, and I am almost over the top cautious, even weighing in on things that are borderline therapy. But with the coaching mentoring, without doubt, it's one bleeds into the other and vice versa. It always has done for me.
Interesting. So if you do disappear, I will be sending out a recording of this. I do thoroughly encourage you to listen to the rest of it, because I might just change your view on that a little bit through today. Because I used to also sit in that absolute line. I'm not a therapist. In fact, that was part of my introduction on my first, call to somebody. If this is how I work, this is what I call myself. I am not a therapist, and I'm still not a therapist. However, yeah, in the definitions of coaching, I think I migrate a little bit over the line sometimes.
Good to know. Good to know. I think it's as well. I have a more than 50% audience that are neurodivergent, and especially come to me off the back of referrals and the ADHD side of the house. And I think for that reason, I'm like, no, I'm not your therapist. But yeah, that's really interesting to hear. Thank you for that. I will listen to the recording later.
Yeah, absolutely. If you drop out, then I would say it's probably worth your while listening in. Not that you have to agree with us, but so that you know where some other coaches are going, because it's not as clear cut and black and white as it used to be. I'm gonna be cheeky and say, Angel, do you want to follow that? Because knowing that you were part of the book Coaching Reimagined, you might have something to say about that.
Yes, like everybody is mentioning other stuff, so it's already indicating how broad coaching is nowadays. And I stepped in later on. I changed also my career, so I've been in coaching now like almost 10 years. So I was happy to learn already about the newest stuff. And I have more, and we also have a different client base. I have more private clients who are looking for, also with the stress and anxiety phases, and looking for breaking patterns. And I'm also more about going into regulating nervous systems, and breaking patterns that are woven into it. And I really loved also what the flow to dance, what Rasha said. So how are you able to move into the world? And what attracted me now in this coaching, in this topic now, was like, I feel also that the world is, and the coaching world and the world is changing quite heavily. And I don't know how it is in your parts of the world, but here in the Netherlands, like, you have so many people saying like, oh, you have to come to me for this and that, and they really don't have a clue what they're doing, and calling themselves coach or even therapist.
Yeah.
And there is so much around there that clients, I have the feeling, or they don't see, they can make up their mind where to go to, or what is somebody offering. And otherwise, maybe also looking into all the online or even ChatGPT options in coaching. So then I think, oh my God, this is so they're looking for very general things to solve their issues, to solve their problems. But every person is so individual that you have to really look into an individual way to solve their things.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Help me.
Louise, could you just mute yourself while Angel's talking?
So sorry, Suzanne.
That's all right. I've muted her from here. Sorry, Louise, I've just muted you while Angel was talking.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So yeah, I feel there's a lot changing in the world. So how do you, yeah, that's an interesting point. How do you promote or show yourself as a coach, and what way you will work with clients?
Yeah, and if we're as experienced coaches having this conversation, imagine Joe Public trying to work out what coaching is. You know, it is a minefield. So it leads me beautifully, beautiful segue. Louise, I'm assuming you're on 2 devices and there's not another person sat there. Yeah.
You are correct.
It looked like you were on both of them when you popped up one to the other.
Yes, I was moving between 2.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to show you a slide, and I just want you to kind of feel into yourself what happens when you see it. What interpretation do you put around it? How are you reading it? It's a bit like the, each shoots and leaves. But what comes to you when I put this slide up? Is it more of a form of coaching, like there's mindset coaching, life coaching, health coaching, change coaching? Or is it a kind of subtle command? Where did your thoughts go when you first saw that? Anyone?
You mean like what the meaning is for coaching for clients, for people, or
Well, as in
how
just
coaching is changing?
just what came up. Did you read it as we need to change coaching, or did you read it as we can do change coaching as a modality in its own right?
Yeah, I think the latter. So we can do change coaching. So to help people to see to recognize, to understand their own patterns and help them go through the change of how they can change it.
So it's interesting, just 2 words, and yet we probably all kind of read into it. Rakana, are you waving a thumb, or is that by AI that it's just picked you up? Feel free to unmute yourself.
It was agreeing. So
Oh, agreeing.
I saw the same.
Okay, so I wondered whether anybody would take it as almost a subliminal command, because there are presuppositions in those 2 words as well. And it made me think of, the old saying, a fish doesn't know it's swimming in water. If we've been in coaching for 20 years, are we still in the same water that we were, and we're not even aware that we're swimming in the same water, and that for many other people that it's changed? So that was what was going through my mind. And I guess we've all come at it in different times. Linda, you said you're relatively new to it. And Joe, you said 10 years. I said 20 years. Oh, did I say 20? 1990s. It's longer than that now. That's really scary. 30 years. So we're all kind of finding our own way, just as our clients are individual, so our coaches individual. And we've all got our own context and our own experience that took us into certain areas of work. But I have, in a way, and Rakana, you're going to go, don't tell me that, it's against what my business coach says. But I'm still learning. Like, I have just finished a 5-month course in belief transformation, and it was amazing. Like, it's taught me new things in terms of both knowledge base. It was full of neuroscience geekiness, which I love. All of the tools that he shared were evidence-based, which I love. So I not only learned new material, I actually learned new processes as well, and this beautiful, gentle way of changing truly deep held beliefs that filter everything. So I guess it's about how do we choose what we learn on an ongoing basis now that we've got we've ticked the initial box, we're a coach or a mentor or a therapist, whatever. We're in the field. How do we know whether it's worth learning something else? And for me, I always want to come away not just with a happy, clappy, feel good kinesthetic at the end of it. I want to come away knowing that it has added value, knowing that it's something I can use for my client base. So it might be a great modality, but it might not be relevant for my clients. In fact, in all the years I've studied, I think there's only ever been one qualification I got that I have never, ever used with a client, just one. And I won't say what it is because I'm not trying to diss them. But it just didn't sit well with me. It didn't feel, and yeah, you hear people raving about it. So it's nothing to do with the modality. There's something about the fit. I think the business coach is probably right in some extent. You have got more than enough to set up. And if you added up all the money you've trained, or if we added up all the money we trained individually, we'd probably be horrified at the cost of it. However, I do think there is an element of ongoing change that we need to keep up with and learning that goes with that, because not only are we changing as human beings, the society we're living in is changing. AI is rapidly knocking at our door, and the world itself is a very different, it seems to be going much more into that. 10 years ago, I said leadership is moving into a collaborative, distributive leadership style, and we're finally over the hump. And here we are back in absolute right-wing dictatorial leadership in many, many contexts and at many fractal levels. So the world is constantly changing. So maybe it does kind of carry on. So let's go back to the 90s, which is just where I happen to have started as a coach. And you probably have heard of Sir John Whitmore. You can't not have done, really, in coaching circles. And this was a definition that he put out and really popularized. I don't know if it was him that wrote it, but he really popularized it in this book of his. And it was unlocking a person's potential to maximize their own performance and helping them to learn rather than teaching them. Now, if I looked at that in relation to the work I do, there's some truth still in it, for absolute sure, but it doesn't quite cover everything. So I went looking for the first cohort of the bwise course. I went looking for different definitions, and I found loads of them, and they're all slightly different. This one, however, was one I quite liked, and it's by Doctors Who Coach Doctors. I don't know if you're aware of that organization. Its niche is pretty obvious. And coaching is defined as a process of working with individuals to help them achieve their goals, achieve their goals, it's still goals-based, through observation, questioning, and feedback. Interactive and collaborative, and enables individuals to improve their performance and enhance personal and professional development. The coach acts as a facilitator, providing guidance and support. That sounds a little bit like mentoring to me. Guidance and support to help individuals increase their self-awareness, build confidence, and develop skills. Now, I hadn't seen that as mentoring until our conversation tonight, but Doctors Who Coach Doctors have got that mentoring potential within it because they know the role that they're coaching the person in. So it may not be a surprise. If I'd looked at it in a different way, I probably could have picked that up before, that there was a mentoring component to their coaching. It's not traditional coaching, but it is still goals-based. And I think that's the thing that I'm questioning now. The more I read and the more I change and the more I evolve my own coaching, I'm like going, is it still goals-based? Or does just being goals-based limit it in some way? Does it put a boundary and a cage around it that stops me offering the full possible service that I can? And whatever I say tonight, I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's my belief, it's my perception. And if you resonate with it, then we can keep talking. But I do think there are some other people questioning it as well. We all know about the ICF, and the ICF definition and competency-based has changed in the not that long ago, 2025. They changed their code of ethics, for example. And there's a couple of bits. I think you'll be familiar with the formal definition of coaching from them: partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional development potential. So that's similar to before. Client-driven process focuses on setting goals. There it is, fostering self-discovery and developing actionable solutions rather than providing advice. So no advice, well, we could debate that, and actionable solutions. So it's, what are your goals? What's your action plan? But if you dig a bit deeper, there's a couple of other bits in here that is quite interesting. So if you read their competency 2, is anyone ICF credited, by the way? No, okay. So it might not be as relevant to you, but if you're thinking about going ICF and you think, oh, they're just Coles based, so I'm, it's not quite as simple these days because they have changed their definitions a bit. So competency 2 embodies a coaching mindset, which is one of the biggest shifts in the 2025 competency update. And this is a quote from them: coaching is now seen not only as what you do, but also as who you are while doing it, emphasizing the need for the coach to do their own inner work. I think that alludes to ontological coaching, which if you go back 10 years, they were absolutely against ontological coaching. So that's a big shift for them. However, under competency 3, it still says we're about goals focusing. But then within that, it talks about raising awareness and facilitating growth. So I think some of these black and white boundaries are merging and shifting. I don't think they're as clear cut as they were even 10 years ago. And one thing that really excited me in a way was that the ICF says the coach needs to articulate their coaching philosophy as well as their styles of working. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Have we all got a clear coaching philosophy? Could we cite it to our clients? Is it written on our website? Do we make sure that our behaviors and everything we do fit with that? So style of working, maybe, but coaching philosophy, interesting. That's quite a big move. So I think it is a real invitation beyond just me to look at our definitions, look at our philosophies, and say, when did we last look at it? And does it need a bit of an update or an edit, either because the world's changed or I've changed or I've taken on more training, or the whole world of coaching has changed since then? Could be all sorts of reasons. Is it still fit for purpose? The coaching definition you had back then, is it still a good description? Have you even got a good, clear description? If somebody phoned you up and said, hey, what's coaching? I've heard this thing of coaching. What is it? Could you give a definition? A quick, almost elevator pitch style definition of what coaching is. When I rebranded and I changed my tagline, it took me quite a while to come up with the new kind of tagline that is as close to a kind of working definition to explain to people what I do, which is far more invitational than my previous approach to coaching. And it is, rather than now sitting going, well, I'm not a therapist, it's more about, as a coach, under the umbrella of a coaching philosophy, I work with people who want to and are ready to change and who are willing to do the work between the sessions. So I don't say I'm not ever going to give advice. In stress and anxiety, I find myself giving advice on fairly regular basis, what breathing to choose, how to regulate the nervous system. But I don't focus on advisory. It is about helping them to get regulated, safe, stable again, in order that we can then say, so what would it be useful for us to work together on? So that's kind of gives you a bit of a insight, I guess, as to where my thoughts have been. One way of checking out your clarity of your definition would be if you had 3 words that gave a summary of what your coaching is about. What would those 3 words be? And I'm not going to ask you to give it here and now, but it'd be a great thing for you to reflect on for yourselves, because the clearer that is, the clearer you are to actually being able to describe what you do that is current and future-proof. And of course, we've already begun to talk about what it's not. And I don't know about you, but when I trained initially in the 90s, there was some very, very clear guidance about what was coaching and what was therapy and what was definitely not coaching in relation to therapy, as if there was this brick wall between the two and you could never cross it. Some of the things I was trying to think back, coaching is future focused, therapy is backward focused. And that's interesting, with all we know about belief formation. And even just this morning, I was reading a paper that if you...
Sorry, Suzanne. Sorry, say that again.
So coaching is future focused and therapy is backward focused.
Yeah.
But we know that where we've come from, our experiences have created the neural pathways and patterns that we have, and therefore they're part of who we are in this present moment. And I was reading a paper today, which I had actually seen a couple of weeks ago, but someone else must have posted about it today, about writing in about your future self, but in the past tense. Well, if it's future focus, can I do that? Well, of course I can. So that, you know, there's some things I just kind of go, now, I don't think that's as clear cut. And I will quite often go in a backward direction to help someone understand the pattern that they're playing out. I'm not going back there in a clinical context. I was told working at an ontological level was therapy, but we've already seen how even in the ICF, that's already changing. And I say even in the ICF only because probably 15 years ago, the ICF absolutely in writing said that they did not do ontological coaching. So that's a big change for them. And another common one is about emotions, that emotions is therapy and coaching is not about feelings or emotion. But what about emotional intelligence? What about, you know, all the work of the emotional culture deck that some of you know that I use? There's so many ways that it's almost like, how can you not include emotions and feelings within coaching, even if you're in a traditional linear goals-based model? Because if you've got someone who's non-compliant, you want to know what they're feeling that's making them non-compliant, for example. So I think it's interesting that it's changing. And I know for myself that I definitely work across that boundary now. And I think it does put a responsibility on coaches that do cross that boundary, or I like to think that I'm in the grey area between the two, is how do you keep your clients safe? How do you keep yourself safe? I think, Louise, your comment about risk is absolutely pertinent and it needs to be considered. And there will be all sorts of caveats to my work in ways that I can keep myself and my clients safe, not least of which working with their mental health team, if they are in mental health cover, that both sides know what's happening and it's done openly and transparently. And I now work, I've even been into mental health inpatient hospitals to see some of my clients with the consent of the psychiatric team in the unit. As long as we've got agreement about where I work, where I don't work, and if I can work with anxiety, I can work with nervous system regulation, they're more than happy with that. I am not doing the pure clinical work, but that creates a boundary. Don't know what comes up for you as I say with that. I think for me, what I'm saying is I don't agree with all I was taught back in the 90s about where those boundaries are. And I don't agree with where some coaching organizations still say those boundaries are. And that's why I don't choose not to belong to them, because in all integrity, I can't belong to them and do what I do. So I choose not to belong to them. Okay. I thought we'd have a little bit of I have reflected on some of the clients that come to me, and I'm going to share some real brief scenarios of clients. And all I want you to do is think about, is it coaching or is it therapy? Would you take them on as a client, as a coach? Maybe if I can get my chat. Oh, 3 in the chat. Oh, yeah, there we go. So I'll put the chat on so that you can just write C or T after each one. C if you think it's absolutely coaching, T if you think it's therapy. And I am having only an either or option for you. You can't kind of go, well, it's a bit of each. It's either it's in or it's out, which is a bit cheeky. So client number 1 wants to come and see you to explore how they're thinking about a problem at work. They want to understand what's happening and what may be contributing to why they see things the way they do. Coaching or therapy? UC's going in. Yep. Okay. Client number 2. Client has been feeling a bit down lately, and she's not feeling motivated at work. In fact, she feels her performance is suffering, and she fears she may get called up about it at work. Coaching or therapy? Thanks, Louise. As I say, watch the video back, and if you want to jump on and have a chat with me after that, then feel free. Thanks for turning up. Okay, another one that's coaching. Alrighty, number 3. And it's not that these are right or wrong. It's just interesting, right? That we're all coming up with similar. Number 3, a client comes to you and describes feeling really down. She's had a few things going on. Her partner left her 6 months ago. She didn't get a promotion at work, and she's struggling to put on a happy face for the team. Coaching or therapy? Another coaching one. Okay, number 4, someone comes to you saying they have anger issues and their manager has asked them to seek coaching as team members are getting upset. Coaching or therapy? That's cheating. Either or. Oh, Rakana, therapy. Interesting. We've crossed the line. Okay, number 5. Your client is tired all the time. They're wondering if they have burnout. Coaching, therapy. Hey, I thought burnout might push more of you onto the therapy line. All right, number 6. Someone comes to you because they've read about nervous system regulation and they wonder if you can help. Coaching, therapy. I think the very fact that you are all putting C shows how far we've moved, right? Because I think if we'd have done this 10 years ago, quite a few of these would have been, oh, I think that's in the therapy line. All righty, number 7. Looking at someone who presents with terms on this word cloud. Coaching or therapy? Let me read some of them out. Grief, stigma, worried, self-harm, post-traumatic stress, depression, drugs, phobia, bipolar, anorexia, optimist, grief, anxiety, therapy. So we've crossed the line now. Someone feels, this is number 8, someone feels they're being bullied at work. Coaching, therapy. To coaching. It's very interesting because many people, you know, that I have a kind of a client base in the bullying space, and quite a lot of them come with those word clouds from the one before, which for you was therapy. Interesting. Okay, number 9, a client says they have worn masks for so long to fit in. They don't know who they are anymore. Can you help? So some of them not quite so clear. All of these have been clients of mine, and they've all sat under that coaching umbrella. Rightly or wrongly, I've taken them on as coaching clients. Some of them with some additional support, like if they've come through a GP referral, I make sure they're also being seen by the GP or mental health clinic, so that we're in open communication around that. But I have had inpatient psychiatric care, as I've already talked about. I've had 2 people who were inpatient for quite a few weeks with psychosis who then came to see me when they came out. Interesting.
Yes, Suzanne, and I think it also changed during the years because I once also had somebody who once was diagnosed bipolar, but when we dove in to her, all she went through, it was more anxiety based, but somebody put the label on.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people with a DSM label, and what might not be correct, or yeah, you can, whatever you have, even as when we go somewhere and we want a DSM label, we get one. Everybody can get one.
Once you've got that label,
yeah,
it's so easy to fall into becoming that identity. So easy.
Yes. And then you divert it to therapy where you don't necessarily find the solution.
Yeah, because they're not necessarily working at the level you want to work at.
exactly.
So I'm sure some of you at some point wanted to go, well, it depends. That's my favorite answer to anything. It depends. And I want to know more information. And so I guess my invitation to you to reflect on is, what other information would you want to get? And how would you get it? Would you have a chemistry call? What questions would you ask? What would be your deal breakers that would push you into therapy so you would say no? Do you have an intake form? And on your intake form, do you ask any of those questions? You have to answer them now, but I think these are the sorts of questions we are asking ourselves now, because we are in this space where we're on this kind of crossover between the two. And I personally do not think there is a definitive list now that this list is coaching and this list is therapy. I think it does depend, but that puts a huge responsibility on us as coaches. One, to be well trained to deal with whatever we have taken on, but also to know when to refer on, and how to keep both them and us safe. So in terms of, wonder what happened in your body, in your mind, in your narrative and story, the words as we went through those. Was it easy to decide? Was it clear cut? Oh, yeah, C, oh, yeah, T. Or, was there some hesitation? Was there some questions? What were those questions? Be good to journal about those and reflect on them, because they'll be your points at which you might get a client coming onto you who fits into one of those similar categories. As I say, all of those are real clients that have come to me, and they've come to me knowing I sit under the coaching banner. What would persuade you to change your view? If somebody came to you and they looked like they were therapy, but they went, oh, but I've heard about you and I really know you've got a good reputation and I know you're safe and I really want to come, what would you need to hear from them? Or what other boundaries would you put in place that would mean that you would see them, but you would have a short measure of handing them on at any point, so you're not promising that you will necessarily go through a whole package with them. And having looked at all of those, how does it align to your definition of coaching? Does it challenge it in any way? Again, no right or wrong answers. I'm just putting some reflections out there for you. So back to that initial question, when did you last review and reflect on your definition of coaching? Especially if you have been coaching for a number of years, do you review it after every training? Do you review it if you have one of those challenging clients that pushes your boundaries, one of those clients that you might take to supervision, for example? Having done that, do you then look back at your definition of coaching? And also, how do you review it? Do you sit quietly with a pen and paper and add in some words or take some words out, or do you take it to supervision? Or have you got a really good group of peers who you can have those conversations with? Because of course, we're the fish swimming in the water and we might not be aware of what we're not aware of. So having somebody else to do that with can be incredibly useful. Is your definition on your promotional materials, your website? Do you share it on social media? How do you talk about it if you're in any network groups? I'm in a newish network group, been about 4 months now, and we all go around the table and we have 60 seconds to say what you do. That's quite a challenge. When we're talking about an it depends scenario, I'm not your standard traditional goals-based coach. Well, there's 20 of your seconds gone. So getting really clear on that can be really useful from a marketing perspective as well. Here's another question. If you were starting coaching today and you could create the definition, the tools, what it feels like, sounds like, what would it be? And would it be different from what you've been working with up until now? And what would drive those differences? Is it the clients that are knocking on the door, or is it your confidence? Is it your training that has pushed you into new areas? There are some of the techniques I have in my toolbox that are very definitely in that therapeutic realm. So interactive drawing therapy, usually, and I've trained at multiple levels in it, usually I'm one of the few who are not counselors or therapists in that room. The vast majority of the people in that training are counsellors or therapists. Havening, another one that I have in my toolbox. That sits right on the verge of, and it doesn't call itself coaching, but there are coaches who are trained in it, but it really sits on the verge of therapy and claims all sorts of possible positive outcomes from that. So, again, how has it changed over time for you? If you're curious where I've gone, just to give you an idea where I'm at the moment, and it's dynamic and changing, and it might change again. But this is my model of bwise advanced coaching, and I didn't initially call it advanced coaching, and then a very good peer and mentor really of mine looked at it and said, you've got to call it advanced. This is not a standard coaching course. This is for people who already know how to coach. And I thought, fair comment. So I added the word in. But what I've done is said that there is, so B stands for being, wise is wisdom, integrated, systemic, and embodied. So it's a very different form of, not linear head-based. And it works through 12 intelligences at the moment, but even that is probably open to increase. 6 of which are within the body itself. Safety is the core foundation on which that body sits. And then the others are external to self. So there are certainly some other coaching models who look at some of these aspects. I trained as an existential coach, I think 4 or 5 years ago, for example. So there are some that work in this space, but the whole quantum space is changing enormously. And I don't know many coaching trainings who are looking at that and saying, what is the new knowledge around quantum neurology and the whole social biology, the quantum bio field. There's so many new things coming out that impact wholly on the person that's in the middle, the 7 internal ones. So that's what mine looks like. It will grow, I'm sure. And I found this, it's actually a TED talk by Emily, I don't know how you say that middle name, Esfahani Smith. Well worth a listen to if you haven't, and that's the link for it at the bottom of that slide. But she looked at meaning, and lots of my clients these days are kind of pushing into that space, meaning and purpose. Is it worth going to work? Why do I bother? What's life about? So it was a good one linked to that, and she's broken it into 4 pillars basically. The first one is belonging. And we know that people like Matthew Lieberman and David Rock have questioned Maslow's hierarchy and put belonging lower down. So it kind of fits with that. It also fits the other thing. Sometimes I do these talks and people say, oh, that's fine for your individual clients, but what about in a corporate context or in a workplace? Well, if you are not familiar with the work of Timothy Clark and his psychological safety model, his number 1 step is inclusion and belonging. So it absolutely works in the workplace as well. And how do we coach to that? How do we help them to recognize where they're at? And certainly I wouldn't see many of my clients when they want to work on that sense of belonging or isolation. Lots of the bullying comes in isolation and exclusion. So the belonging comes in a different form. They don't necessarily cite that as a goal as such at the beginning. It emerges as they're talking. So it's being aware of these models, having the expertise in the models, and then asking, I'm curious about, I wonder if. Second one is purpose. Well, I think there's, as I said, I'm getting people asking me about meaning and purpose now in a much higher proportion than I ever did. In the 90s, it just wasn't part of the coaching conversation. Now it's a fairly standard. And I wondered how that fits quite nicely with things like Simon Sinek's Start With Why, getting that clarity for people. So a lot of this, while it's her model, I think there are crossovers to some of the others. Number 3, which was part of the reason why I brought this here tonight, is stepping beyond yourself. So there's my without categories of intelligences. So I've got the within, which is about me, and then the without, What is it around me that actually is bidirectional between the two? And then the fourth one, the storytelling. We know we are often head-based, we're narrative-based, and that cognitive neuroscience of storytelling is really strong. How we narrate events, how we take meaning from those, what meaning we give it. And it made me curious. What story do you tell yourself about why and how you became a coach, for example? And if there's a particular type of coaching, what story do you tell your clients and yourself around that? What story do you tell about keeping up to date and being future-proofed? Particularly with AI, it's a fairly regular conversation if you look at LinkedIn at the moment. What's your story as to why coaching is valuable? You heard me say earlier, I truly believe coaching is of its time. And I think we are being called to step up and offer more than we have been. That's my story. What's your story about coaching and value moving into the future? At the end of her TED talk, she gives a beautiful kind of summary, a powerful words. I'll read it to you. That's the power of meaning. Happiness comes and goes. But when life is really good and when things are really bad, having meaning gives you something to hold on to. And if you look at definitions like VUCA and Barney, it's all about uncertainty, ambiguity, not having something certain to hold on to. So by having the meaning in place, whatever happens around you, you've got that as your solid foundation. But is meaning a goal? Can we measure it? Not sure that you can. Certainly would be quite difficult to create a SMART goal around it. So it feels like it's something lots of people would find valuable at the moment, for sure, something they could hold on to in these uncertain times. And as I say, I think this is just an opportunity for us to step into this space. There was this beautiful quote by Matt Licata about purpose rather than meaning. He uses the word purpose, but perhaps our life's purpose has nothing to do with what job we will find, what new thing we will manifest or attract for ourselves, or what mythical awakening journey we will complete. Perhaps the purpose of our life is to fully live, finally to teach here and now moment with our presence and with the gift of our one wild heart. I just think that's such a beautiful phrase. And challenge to us as well as our clients. Are we living fully? Are we touching each here and now moment, or are we living in the past or the future? And this gift of our one wild heart, I just think that's a real beautiful kind of smacks of your dancing with flow again, Rasha, that you called into this morning, earlier. And to do whatever we can to help others, to hold them when they're hurting, to listen carefully to their stories and the ways they're attempting to make sense of a world that's gone a bit mad. That's an understatement. To speak kind words and not forget the erupting miracle of the other as it appears in front of us. Perhaps this is the most radical gift that we all can give. And I think it's ours to give as coaches. I think it's a beautiful quote that really resonated with me, for sure. And if you haven't come across Nick Bolton, he's well worth stalking, I have to say. He is UK based and he runs a company called Animus Coaching. And he's probably the closest I've come across that is speaking a similar language to me at the moment. So he says much of traditional coaching is focused on goal attainment, supporting clients to move from A to B more effectively. This is valuable, but it assumes the client's current way of seeing the world is accurate and sufficient. It's that fish in water again. It's all they know. Transformative coaching, which is his name of the coaching model, asks a different question. What if the client's paradigm itself is the limitation? And I just thought that was such a deeply profound statement and question. What if the client's paradigm itself is the limitation? If it is, and that's the water they've swum in possibly all their life, they are not going to come to you when you say, what would you like us to work on today? And say, oh, I think my paradigm of how life is and how I'm living, it's limited. They're not going to do that. So how do you get to that level of coaching, which I think is where this really beautiful extra work is possible? The shift in orientation allows us to work with the root system, not just the visible branches. It creates the potential for new ways of being, not merely now new strategies for doing. And I didn't have time to put everything on here tonight, but I also read a very good paper recently questioning the being becoming, and that in the becoming, the presupposition is that you never arrive. And so you're never in the here and now. You're always pushing to something more, and that more pattern is not necessarily a good thing. So some of the things that we've taken on as useful question frames, useful approaches, if you read deep enough, far enough, then you will find some people challenging that. And that's the space I'm in at the moment, is I'm almost challenging everything that I've taken for granted about coaching that has become the water I swim in. And I'm in a completely different lake at the moment. And it is challenging and scary at times, and really exciting and really rewarding. You all know Gabor Mate, I'm sure, but I found this beautiful quote from him. All of Western medicine is built on getting rid of pain, which is not the same as healing. Healing is actually the capacity to hold pain. And I thought, how does that fit with coaching? Is coaching being able to hold whatever the problem is rather than get rid of it? Are we in a way limiting the paradigm of change by assuming that we have to change? What if we didn't have to change? What if actually it was about acceptance? And I think particularly of people like with chronic health conditions, who actually the reality of them healing is remote. How do you help them to hold it? For some of my bullying clients, I can't offer a miracle cure of how to change that. For many, they will end up leaving their jobs. What if I could help them hold that and stay in the job they love? So again, just challenging some of my thinking, some of the presuppositions in questions that I ask. Another one I saw from him recently was, understanding is not healing. Understanding is not healing. Maybe the knowing in the head is not enough, and maybe it's not enough for coaching either. That's a long quote on there, and you can read it if you want to read it, but it comes from the book Provocative Coaching, but it talks about superficial coaching. And it's quite a statement, isn't it? Who as a coach would want their coaching labeled superficial? What are the criteria that makes it superficial? Is it goals based? Is it head based? Is it short-termism? And he says it misses the chance to coach to recurring patterns, which may lead to deeper understanding, habits, and ways of being. So I thought, again, it was called positive provocation, but there was some real provocative statements in there that made me stop and go, oh, hang on a minute. What assumptions have I made? And how do I go deeper? Do I want to go deeper? Yes, I do. I'm clear on that. So that for me, if you want to, I'll move on in a second, but if you want to take a photo of that to get the full quote of it, because it's one probably worth reflecting on and journaling on, and maybe different. You can see which bits resonated with me because I highlighted them, but it might be that as you read it through, you would have highlighted different bits. And I do think sometimes, that middle, pretty much right in the middle, she was so focused on helping the client solve this problem. How many coaches, that's their stance? How do we get them out of that? How do we change that? And this is back to the quantum bits that I was talking to you earlier. There is so much at the moment around quantum.
Sorry, Susan. That's looking like what's the problem that makes the problem, isn't it?
The one before,
the previous one. Yeah, the one before, yes.
So say that
when
again.
You go
what's
deeper,
the problem that makes the problem?
No, when you go deeper, it's like, what's the problem that makes the problem?
Yeah. It's not a terminology I might have used, but that might be translation. What's underneath the problem? What has to be true that that's the problem? Any of those questions? Yeah, absolutely. And it does take courage to go there. it raises some interesting questions about consent and permission as well. What have you consented for up front in your definition of what this coaching package is going to cover? And if you suddenly start going into patterns that, oh, you know, holy moly, they might go back into patterns that have been there from childhood or beliefs that have been there from childhood, have we stepped out of coaching again? So you invite them to bring it up and then you go, oh, but I can't go there because I'm only a coach.
Suzanne, are you happy to share these slides with us?
For a fee? Yeah, no, I can share a PDF of the slides for sure. I'll send it around with the recording link.
Thank you.
Yeah, because there might be a few on, I mean, some of them I tried to restrict the level of text on it, but there was these couple that I thought actually the whole quote is quite juicy and it's worth having the whole quote to reflect on. So this comes out of this book, The Quantum Mindset in a Nutshell. I took quite a long time to read this book. I went back and reread several sections of it several times. And I guess the question is, how are we coaching in these fast changing times where we are more aware of that quantum intelligence without? How do we bring that into a session without looking completely woo-woo and crazy? How do we help the client to connect with that level of intelligence? How do we get them to discern, if they do connect, what is wisdom and what is noise? How do we get them to discern and assess against their own values what feels right for them and what they will take on, even if it has come from outside? And when are we going to start talking about coherence way beyond the body? Because actually, for me, coherence is having that alignment and coherence with all of those outer intelligences as well as inside. So if you're curious about that, it is a good read. It's worth a read. He calls it the new quantum vision of reality. And I think that sums it up really, is already here. We are already aware of it. We can show it. There is research about it. And as yet, coaching hasn't fully taken it on board. So he talks about alignment of attitudes and beliefs and expectations with a deeper narrative of the universe. So I've just done this 5-month belief transformation course. We did not talk about quantum in that course particularly. And if I then extrapolate from what I've just learned about beliefs to also include the deeper narrative of the universe, that just blows my mind. Maybe those beliefs were never mine. Maybe they were ones that I absorbed from somewhere else or someone else. Maybe I could just reject them. And this was back in 2019, so it's quite a while ago he wrote the book. I am curious what he might write now. Like if he rewrote the book or updated it, what he would add in, because there's some beautiful stuff coming out. If you haven't heard of quantum tunneling, if you haven't heard of brain tubules, if you haven't looked up the theories of consciousness that link to quantum and mind, there is so much that I think is absolutely relevant to the coaching context that we are just scratching the surface of at the moment. And I wonder what that paradigm shift, if we took that on, would do to our definition of coaching. And how the heck we would put that in without frightening people off. And this is what I was talking earlier, this kind of quantum biology model. It is becoming, in the medical sphere, very well talked about. So this is having an impact. This quantum universal energy and knowledge is having an impact on our individual health and well-being. So if anyone is in that space of health, well-being, stress, anxiety, all of those things, it's almost like, well, we can't not talk quantum biology now as part of that. And that's a big challenge, because how do we do that without going on another course? How do we do that without spending more money? How do we know which course will give us the bit that is relevant to our niche of coaching? So it's taken me quite a long while to kind of come through the other end with at least a model that I'm now offering out to people. Is it the definitive model? No, no way. Will it be what it looks like in a few years? No, no way. but it's a start in this sphere to really broaden out what coaching is, because I think the time is ripe for it. Many of you will be aware of the learning levels and the ladder of learning, whatever you call it. It's got a few different names. But again, take someone like me, 30 years. When did I last consciously, deliberately come back down to the bottom of this ladder and reassess actually what I don't know that I don't know? And I guess that's what I've been doing for the last few years, is I've gone right into that space. Yeah, I've learned a lot in 30 years. The more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. How often do you want to come back down into that space? Because it is a real time killer and it blows your mind. So yeah, at what point do you want to come down, and where would you put yourself at the moment in that, in relation to some of these contexts I've thrown at you, like the quantum biology, like the quantum mindset, even like the provocation one. And if you start looking at how coaching is evolving, how quickly do you go back up the ladder? And when you get back up to the top, do you end up in a different place than when you went down? And I think you would. I think your unconscious competence would be different, having done the dip down and back up. And if you go into mastery, and I'll share you another model in the moment about mastery, which I'm still contemplating. I wrote to the author of the model and got a really surprising result, and I'm still contemplating because I think I disagree with him. And I'll share that with you in a moment. So I am not creating a model as such for the bwise coaching approach. What I have done is created a set of foundational principles so that there is a scaffolding to keep you safe, that there is a platform that you can work from, but the intention is then that you take your own expertise and humanistic approach, and you use that with your clients, having given some I guess layers of the scaffolding to take you up. So that's what there are 9 foundational principles. That's what they are at the moment, and they might change. I don't know. I was going to say to you about the book, but I mentioned it earlier, so I won't say much more at the moment, other than to remind you this is already happening. This is me not saying that this is in the future. This is already happening. Angela, do you want to say something as an author of Coaching Reimagined?
No, I have to jump off now, for I have another appointment, but I really loved it. It's so valuable, this. Yes, yeah. The book is also
watch back the end of it, and
yes, I'll do. Thank you very much.
Lovely to see you. The other thing we mentioned earlier, what about AI? What role is AI going to have in coaching in the future? It's going to change. Now, I did a little bit of a search, and I read a few articles, and all those, I don't know if you'd call it burgundy or plum color, they are all words that came directly out of those articles. So this is stuff that's already being written about. The breaking news, AI could wipe out the human race. So you've got right from that big catastrophizing, kind of scary headlines, that it's not controllable, that it's self-replicating. Now we are already seeing some AI models having to be shut down because it's self-replicating. Intentionally lying, I thought that was interesting. How many people are just going to believe what's being told? There's already some legal cases being taken around mental health and suicidation caused by using advice from AI. Taking jobs, that's been going on for quite a while in terms of the literature about it. You can read down those. But the fact is, we are going to have to work out what our relationship with AI is. Now, I, at the moment, am sitting in the position where I think we have unique humanness to offer that AI can never offer in the same way, linked to emotions, linked to energy, linked to electromagnetic radiation and what we pick up from communication in that way, and linked to this beautiful individuality that we talked of earlier, of how we meet our clients, that will never be putting them in a box. I know as a client, I do not want to be put in a box. And so if that's what AI would do for me, then I'm not interested. But just this morning, I did I didn't do the course this morning, but I did a course with Dan Brule on breathing a while back. And he has just launched his AI version of him so that he can go and sell it to millions of people. So basically, you clone yourself and you put the courses out delivered by AI. Interesting, eh? And certainly, there's quite a few people talking about AI will replace superficial, process-driven style coaching. That is going to happen. So how do we protect ourselves? We offer something more than that. We go deeper, wider. This is the model I was talking to you about. It was on LinkedIn about 3 weeks ago, and it talked about the layers of coaching excellence. So it caught my eye, like you would expect it to do. It's by a guy called Graham Nichols, and I was intrigued, and I read the whole article below the model. And he claims most coaches don't get past level 2, human connection. And I'm like going, whoa, if I'm a coach and I'm being told I'm at level 2, that feels like a real dig in the ribs kind of insult, a bit like being called superficial. So that's quite a statement he's made. I don't know if he's got research to back it up, but he said coaching excellence isn't about credentials, it's about depth. He says we don't need frameworks, processes, or more certifications. And he asked the question, how do we move to level 3 and above? He does say that there's an awful lot of coaches as well who overestimate where they're at. So if you actually ask them what level they were at, they'd probably say above it. But when he's assessing them, he thinks they're at level 2. Now, me being me, because we're used to the staircase of learning up to mastery, I looked at level 5, invisible mastery. Your way of being becomes the intervention. And I looked up his text around it, and it says, clients transform and can't explain how. Your way of being becomes the intervention. So I reached out to Graham and I asked him the question, how do we teach coaches to move to level 5? Don't know what you would expect his response to be. He is a trainer of coaches. He writes a lot. He's quite a prolific writer on LinkedIn, and some of his posts are really good. Like, I quite often refer people to them to have a look at what's happening in coaching. So I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting what he gave me. Wonder what your response would be if I asked you the same question. How do you get, like, how are you moving yourself up the levels, if you are moving yourselves up the levels? Anyway, this was his response to me. Let me just click on it. I don't think you can be taught to be at level 5, he said. It's something that comes with time, experience, and a whole lot of self-awareness. Now, as I said to you, I disagree with him. I absolutely think that we can teach, model, mentor, supervise to get coaches to a higher level of mastery. And it kind of got me thinking about what presuppositions are there in training courses? What presuppositions are there in some of the models around coaching? Because if that's his belief, they'll show up in language or questions. The implication that you're not going to get to mastery as a coach, or it's not expected you go beyond level 2. I found that really, really challenging and totally not in alignment with my own views about what's possible, and certainly what I'm hoping to put forward as the level that we end up with. So I just invite you to reflect for yourself. What level would you put yourself on? If it was a measurable thing, how could you prove you're on that level? Or are you someone that overestimates? And if you wanted to get to level 5 and mastery, how would you do that? And back to the question we started with, how does that impact your definition of what coaching is and your philosophy around coaching? So it's just asking questions, really.
Suzanne?
Yeah.
Just a question.
Yeah.
If he says your way of being,
Yep.
Your way of being is so much more than what you've been taught in supervision or a course or courses. Isn't that who you have become as a person?
Yeah. And if you're looking at a model of mastery, which has got competence and achievement and interventional ability and all of that capability within it, that to me is not that far afield from being a professional. So I come out of healthcare. How do you become the ultimate professional in your field? There'll always be that element of being. But I still think that we can model others of how they're doing that. That's the whole NLP framework, right? Modeling. So who and how do we model? How do we challenge ourselves? How do we see our blind spots? How do we step down into that? What do we not even know we don't know? I think there are ways of doing it using supervision, using peer mastermind groups, and yes, ongoing learning. And maybe learning things outside your comfort zone, learning things in areas that you wouldn't necessarily think about going and learning on. So there's something in me, as I said, I'm like still mulling it over to some extent, but there's something in me that fundamentally disagrees with it. Because otherwise we're saying only a few coaches will ever get there. And what, they do it by chance?
Yeah, I agree. I find that a bit difficult.
It's interesting, eh?
Yeah, very. Russia,
So,
what do you think?
What's Lindy? What's your question? What do I think about what?
Oh,
this model in terms of can
yeah,
you get to mastery?
the level 5 and his answer to Suzanne.
Yeah, I was indulged about the level 5. So it's just like someone has been hypnotized in a coaching session, but that really, really realign with what the client needed without even knowing, or what the client got aware of without even being told. So, and then you can't come out of that drug or phase and surprise yourself that it really happened effortlessly. What comes into it is that a lot of people in their mind, when you get into the phase of integrating everything, the brilliancy of other brain, and then go and use the modality of the sensations that we have been numbing, and then having that synchronization happening with safety and being really aware of what's happening to the two nervous system into an environment that foster change, where you feel really, really in an alignment of that brilliance. And this comes really by starting with ourselves. How, because the client wouldn't be able to go farther than what we have done for ourselves to experience what that is. Not necessarily experiences it, but you wouldn't be able to stretch others without having to face a lot of things within yourself. So the synchronicity and being aware of what happens to us, what triggers us, and even work with it in the same parallel, without being afraid of going deeper to that level. Things happen into a space where transformation happens. I can't word it. I can only feel it. I can only see it. All those sensations that I have been aware of, when I started integrating it, I knew that things are possible. It's just that being present with whatever gets presented at you. I hope that helps. I've been just thinking about that question, and thanks, Lindy and Susan, for that.
Yeah, I mean, I love where you've gone with that. It does make me wonder that you're talking from the mastery position. So if we had time, I'd be exploring, well, if he thinks you can't be taught to get there, how did you get there? That's interesting. And also, I totally agree in terms of you can't take someone further than you've been before. So if he believes that most coaches are at level 2, what he's also presupposing is that we don't take clients beyond level 2 either.
Yeah.
Which is not what you're talking about. You're talking about these deep, deep paradigm shift of change and transformation and ways of being. So I just found it a really interesting response from a trainer to hold the presupposition that you can't be taught to get there. And maybe it's a definition of the word taught. Maybe it's not about taught as in didactic, sitting in a lecture theatre. But I do think that you can be equipped and encouraged and supported to extend your skills, which for me is teaching by any other name. Anyway, I'm aware of the time, so I'll jump on. I've said this before. For me, it's now about working within, working without, and working between. And even the space in between is not empty space, which is kind of what you just alluded to, really, Rasha, is there's a lot of work that's done in that space, in the silence, in the quiet, in the just human connection. That's well known. So how do you teach people to do that? We do that within the course. This is a quote from the book from last year, Coaching Reimagined. For decades, it's been defined by structured conversations, tools, and frameworks designed to help individuals set and achieve specific goals. It's been measured in outcomes, milestones, and progress, and yet the world is shifting. People are seeking something deeper, something more integrated, more human, more alive, and coaching must evolve to meet that call. I wrote that last year. I still absolutely believe in what I wrote with that. So this is the model. Just to kind of thank you for being here. It starts again in May, and we are holding open the early bird for people who came on this call or signed up for this webinar. So if you're listening back to it and you didn't make it, this applies to you as well. That if you let us know by Friday, New Zealand time, 5 p.m. Friday, then you will still get the early bird, which makes quite a significant difference. I will put the link to the course on the email with the link to the recording and the PDF of the slides for you. So you've got all of that. And if you have any questions at all, then come back to me. I'd be happy to answer them. It's a 9-module course. It's delivered online, live. It's me, live, but it is online, so it's open to anyone around the world. And there is a growing resource vault behind that has an awful lot of additional information, optional reading for people who want to go and do the geeky research reading. There's a whole toolbox beginning to grow where tools that I've created as part of this, I'm putting in there for people to use. There will be a whole load of client worksheets to come, and you get lifetime, well, while I'm living and breathing. You will have access to that. It's not just while you're on the course, so there's no hurry to view it. And I'm hoping along the line somewhere, because I am getting to the point where I'm beginning to think about retirement, that somewhere along the line there's a succession plan and someone else picks this model up and runs with it, so that that access would stay live for you forever, not just even while I'm still working. Have you got any questions about it that I haven't said, just in that quick overview of it?
No, not at the moment. Thank you, Suzanne.
No, beautiful. A client who came for coaching with me, I thought she beautiful client. She says, my experience was totally transformative. I feel more in tune with myself, as if all the parts of me have been brought back into the fold. I understand my behavior patterns and can change them. The work was science-backed, deeply compassionate and non-judgmental. It changed my relationships, my health, and my business. So that is not a goals-based coaching, right? That's a paradigm shift. And I have another lady who is a very, very experienced coach, much more in the workspace rather than personal client space. And she's been with me in supervision for a little while now. And she said, you'll leave your comfort zone, but you'll find yourself, and it will only make your coaching stronger. So I just thought some of those testimonials kind of really highlight how hopefully you can see I walk the talk, that I don't coach within a traditional model. And so what I'm going to be teaching people how to coach is also outside that traditional model. Leaves me with the same question we started. When did you last review your coaching definition? And I wonder whether having been here today will encourage you to go and look at that and get that really clear in your mind. Thank you. Seriously, thank you for coming, for spending an hour and a half with me, for being part of the discussion. And yeah, happy to take any questions down the line. You know how to get hold of me. You can reply to the emails, have another listen back, have a look at the slides, go and do the reflections on some of those quotes. As I say, this wasn't to say this is the definitive. This was just to say that it's a discussion, and it's an ongoing discussion, and one I think that will keep changing. So I will stop the recording there. There we go.